Davis and the Jake Man is a New England-based monthly podcast hosted by two certified computer technicians. The podcast is accompanied by our website, davisandthejakeman.com, where we continue the discussion and broaden the show's focus to include tech reviews and subjects of note in the IT industry.
So, Jake, what is your opinion on these Chromebooks I keep seeing everywhere?
Well, I haven't shared this with the listener, but of course you already know this. I'm a computer salesman, and that's something I get asked on the job quite often. And as with most products, there are pros and cons. I mean, of course, the pros are that it's easy to set up, updates are installed in the background, multiple users, pre-customized, since most users use Chrome on the desktop. So anyone who wants to create a user account can, and it's already configured with their name, their password, probably a picture as well as their favorites. And the cons, when Chromebooks first came out, they were a very niche product because there weren't a whole lot of web tools available. But in my experience, since Chromebooks first emerged on the market, there are many more free web tools available, as well as cloud subscriptions. Office 365 and the Adobe Creative Cloud come to mind. So on the whole, I think they're a good choice for someone who doesn't need a lot of local processing power. There are a lot of people who could easily get their jobs done in a Chromebook. Well, a lot of people just do web browsing and productivity software, and that's it. So there's no real advantage to going at MS Office and Edge over Google Docs and Chrome.
So how has your customers' experiences been with the Chromebooks?
Largely positive, and that's because I make sure to only recommend them to the right type of customer. You know, there are certain use cases that a Chromebook can't yet fulfill. You know, in my case, audio editing. After we record these podcasts, the software I use, Logic Pro 10, is OS 10 exclusive. There's a Windows equivalent, Sony Vegas, as well as many others, including Adobe software. Audition, I believe, is the one I'd be using if I was one of their customers, and that's available on Windows and Mac. But I don't think there's Audition for the web. There's no Audition for Chrome. So for someone like me, a Chromebook wouldn't work. Also, someone into graphic design, you know, autocorrect, remove red eye, that sort of thing can be done in the web. But really powerful photo editing is only available with a local installation. So basically, Chromebooks are great for productivity and content consumption, but for content creators, they need either a Mac or Windows machine.
So you're saying that the app choices for the Chromebooks are largely locked in?
Right, yeah. I mean, if there's something you need and it's not available on Chrome, it'd be a safe bet to say that it won't be there in 5 years. Just because computing is moving in such a direction that computers are actually getting weaker. Like, take the machine we're recording on now. It's got a Core M processor. There's a version of Core M that's available in some of the Lenovo machines that I sell. Its speed is measured in megahertz in the year 2016. So, you know, this speed race is over. It's not, now it's a battery race. And even that has given to a thinness race. You know, a lot of the ultra portables don't last much longer than a traditional laptop, but the benefit there is they weigh hardly anything. There's a lot of lock-in there.
Very anti-competitive.
In one sense, yes. I mean, the advantage is that a web browser is supposed to be neutral, and in a sense, you know, there are types of software developers that need a local installation and able to sell their product because, you know, their software requires more power. Anyone who's developing for those markets won't get a dime out of a Chromebook user. One of the questions I get most often when a customer is considering a Chromebook is, why should I choose this over a tablet? And aside from it has a built-in keyboard and trackpad, there really isn't a good answer. I mean, you get the desktop version of Chrome, but a lot of the tasks that people are doing on a day-to-day basis, there's an app for it now. App development has cannibalized web development in a very dangerous way. Like, take the mobile web, for example. You never want to open up the browser on your phone unless you have to. The app experience is superior to that of the web experience. Like, you know, in my experience, the Twitter client for the web stinks. Facebook is so-so. The DeviantArt mobile website is horrendous.
Yeah, I'll agree.
Yeah. Conversely, their apps are very usable, fluid, fast, responsive, you know, an enjoyable experience. So the fact that Android and iOS devices have a stripped-down web browser isn't really as bad of a factor as someone might at first think. I mean, of course, you've got your corporate users who have desktop-only web tools they need to get work done. And for them, they would definitely want a Chromebook or a Windows machine over an iPad or Android tablet.
So the largest difference between Chromebooks and Android OS is the apps.
Right. In the case of Chrome, it's web apps because it's got a full desktop HTML5 compliant web browser. Whereas Android and iOS, your premium experience is had inside of apps, not inside of Chrome or Safari. Some more advantages are that with a Chromebook, no matter what version you buy, you're getting the same experience aside from the hardware. Like, it's a web browser. You can't install anything else on a Chromebook. We just discussed the disadvantages, but now let's get into the advantages of that. Samsung makes Chromebooks, but you can't have the Samsung App Store or the Galaxy Exhibit VR Experience S6 Plus, pre-installed on a Chromebook.
The reckoning.
Right, yeah. It's just not going to happen. I, for a short time, tested out the Asus Chromebook Flip C100. It's a 10.1-inch 2-in-1 Chromebook. I like that it was aluminum, but the screen was too small, and there's just a number of things about that I didn't like. I'll get into that perhaps in an article for our website. But suffice it to say, the only bloatware they could cram into that thing was a web link to their homepage. That's all they could do. Because, however, when you get into tablets, there's a lot of opportunity for the manufacturer to take advantage of their market power, especially Samsung. Like, they sell a spot on their app drawer to, good example is Fitbit. I wonder how much of Fitbit's success can be attributed to the fact that Galaxy phones and tablets have the Fitbit app pre-installed. Like, some uninformed users might think they need, if they want a fitness tracker, a Fitbit in order to ensure compatibility.
Marketing at its finest.
Yeah, and it's a combination of marketing and lying by omission. The same way that, a bunch of devices have Evernote pre-installed. They might think they need to use Evernote over Google Keep or Microsoft OneNote because Evernote is what came pre-installed, so it must be the best one, right? What it comes down to is their bottom line. It's the same reason you don't see a lot of software updates for mid-range and low-end devices, is because there's no more profit to be had after the person buys the product. Like, the Galaxy Tab A isn't going to be updated to Marshmallow most likely because it's, a $200 device.
And as you know, we both hate bloatware with a passion. I believe last year there was the whole Lenovo Superfish incident.
I'm not familiar with that. What happened?
Lenovo had some pre-installed certificates which could be taken and used to sign, I believe, applications. Hackers had a field day with that one. Yeah. So Lenovo's Superfish was basically a malicious adware. It actually had access to the SSL certificates on the computer and was able to perform man-in-the-middle attacks. Let's see. I have the list here. Hijacks legitimate connections, monitors user activity, collects personal information and uploads it to its servers, injects advertising in legitimate pages, displays pop-ups with advertising software, uses man-in-the-middle attack techniques to crack open secure connections, presents users with its own fake certificate instead of the legitimate site certificate.
One thing that comes up a lot is, can I trust Lenovo, this Chinese manufacturer?
Well, Lenovo lost a lot of face with this Superfish nonsense. They actually had to publish instructions to remove it.
Why not just issue a patch?
I believe they eventually patched it out, actually. But yeah, and the certificate used by Superfish was a deprecated SHA-1 certificate, which these days is easily broken by most hackers.
I'd want to say it's surprising, but I guess sickening would be probably the best way to describe it. And the thing is, too, I bet you if there wasn't such an outcry from users, they'd still be doing it. That's probably the worst thing to take away from this. Something else to consider, too, is like half of that list could have been a Windows 10 description. It's like...
Right. I mean, I believe Windows has come under a little bit of fire for showing ads on their start screens in Windows 10.
Yeah, I saw one. For the short time I owned the Microsoft Surface 3 before it got stuck in a boot loop. Maybe I should do a write-up for that for the website at some point too. 'Cause it's a free upgrade, but they probably want to make back that server cost and then some.
I believe that Windows Microsoft 10 push is kind of interesting because they're trying to get everything all on one platform again. That way they don't have to invest as much in compatibility research.
The blowback from the Windows 10 pressuring from Microsoft has been severe, and it hasn't really died down. And yet, I feel like even though they have commercial interests for upgrading users to the so-called latest and greatest, it's a benefit to users because, the newest version of Windows is always the most secure because it'll get the longest support. Old malware written for previous version of Windows may be incompatible. Plus, you get faster speeds with the same hardware, presumably.
I mean, don't get me wrong, Windows 10 is a very solid operating system. It is quick, it is responsive, it has fixed a lot of the issues with Windows 8. It was maybe about a week I had it before all the privacy concerns started popping up.
Yeah, I remember when those first came to light, you were very concerned and you immediately began planning your downgrade.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even that I have anything to hide, it's just that the invasion of privacy.
Right, your information is yours. It's funny, you downgraded to Windows 8 and I switched to a Mac. We both were concerned with Windows 10.
Yeah, and I recently changed my laptop into a Linux Mint machine.
And now when I need to run Windows software, I run a VM of XP. I think that's my solution.
It works?
Yeah, as long as I don't give it internet access.
Shameless segue.
Apple takes the radical approach and doesn't support anything for more than a few years. It's planned obsolescence to the extreme. Microsoft takes the opposite approach, and Microsoft, contrary to Apple, supports legacy software for longer than is safe. Microsoft Corp versus Commission. Because I feel like, just like the Osborne effect, I feel like this is a bit of technology history that more people should know about. Like, this is a huge deal. For 4 years and change, they were forced to comply with a ruling from the European Union that mandated that users in those markets be greeted with browserchoice.eu, a now depreciated website that allowed users to be informed of Internet Explorer alternatives. We talk about browserchoice.eu. I'm not sure if a similar lawsuit could be brought against, say, Google or Samsung and won by the prosecution, just because the argument that there are a bunch of iPhones around is a pretty good one. Android hasn't cornered the market quite as much as Microsoft once did.
Yeah, I mean, what was it, close to 90% adoption rate?
Yeah, it was in excess of 90 at one point. Android is hovering around 80 by some measurements.
I could definitely see a similar sort of lawsuit occurring. However, at least for now with the mobile markets, if somebody really wants to, they can avoid Android, they can avoid iPhone.
Right, yeah, there are still BlackBerries and Windows phones, and they might not get that app choice, but their basic needs would be fulfilled. There's a music player, SMS, Facebook, phone calling. Those all work fine across these platforms.
I mean, with Google, it's not quite as locked in as Microsoft. If you browse the Google App Store, a lot of times they'll suggest a different web browser. A couple times I've been suggested Mozilla Firefox because I installed Chrome.
I think that's more to keep face than anything. Have you ever tried to use something besides Chrome on a phone?
Yes, I've messed around with Firefox a bit.
And it sucks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, right? Yeah, and Firefox is like great on the desktop. Arguably, it runs better than Chrome on the same hardware. But because Google develops both the OS and the browser, at least on Android, it has that advantage.
Right, those optimizations, those tweaks, that native code.
The reason they're inferior products is because of this integration of OS and browser and all the layers in between.
I mean, it's a choice between having the browser as part of the operating system or having it added on afterwards.
You have a choice between choosing a platform that's part of the OS and something with less permissions.
We might be able to end on that, but
yeah, how long was that?
Davis and the Jake Man is a news website founded and run by two individuals residing in the United States. It is not a company or corporate entity of any sort, nor is it associated with any person or legal entity other than its founders. The views expressed on the Davis and the Jake Man website, podcast, and official social media accounts are solely those held by its founders.
All right, cool. horse, 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 horse. Horse.